Good morning. You are here on another episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. If you are watching us on social media, make sure and hit the subscribe button, share, like, or write us a comment. If it's during the show, we'll even answer your question. If you want to get to all the episodes of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online. Subscribe on any one of the 13 platforms that you listen to podcasts on. And if you want to experience this in person and live, the Engaging Conference this year will be October 1, 2, and 3. It's every October. You can get a free ticket at engagingvirtualmeetings.com/con for conference. And this is the first year we are running hybrid. So you can also get an in-person ticket. 150 lucky people will be there live with us, being able to talk to our 3 Hall of Fame speakers, as well as seeing how virtual is made. You can see all of the behind the scenes and ask questions when we are off the air. Speaking of off the air, we'll actually get back on the air. This next guest, she and I have actually known each other for a long time. We were around the Association of Experiential Education. She is now the founder and CEO of Collaborative by Design. And as I knew her back then, she has now even further created things in the conscious leadership space. Let's welcome, hold on, I gotta get my sound here. Oh, I need my iPad to work faster. Let's see. Let's welcome our today's guest, Cheri Torres.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome, Cheri. How are you?
Thank you. I am great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I love that you have a Shift This deck also with you in your background.
Cool.
Cheri, for our guests, let's see, what's your recollection of how we met? It was quite a while ago.
Oh, it was a long time ago. My recollection would be around the portable low ropes course, Mobile Team Challenge. And boy.
Appreciative inquiry too.
Oh, yes, of course, because that's how we ended up facilitating and doing our trainings around appreciative inquiry. Kind of central to our facilitation approach.
Still today, right?
It is still today. That is exactly right.
I still tell people the bowling story. I'll do the bowling story after your introduction, but let's do this. Cheri, for my friends who don't know you, take a moment now to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Okay, so who I am is someone that is passionate about creating positive change in the world. It is my whole purpose for being. And that passionate change is really about how do we be in relationship with the world as one? How do we live and work and engage with each other in ways that helps the whole thing flourish, ourselves as well as our systems, our organizations. And my focus after years of working with how do you tap into that potential in individuals and then into organizations, I finally have come down to recognizing that conversation is kind of the key factor in everything we do. So all change, all action begins with conversations. If we can do that effectively and in ways that support life, there's nothing we can't do to create a planet that works well for everybody.
Cheri, talk a little more about that. Why is conversation really the key? All right, we know that language is, of course, the primary way that we communicate, but what are some of your latest insights on why conversation is really one of those keys to this result?
Our words, whether we're talking to ourselves or we're talking to other people, actually trigger our entire nervous system, our electrical system, and they're either triggering it for protection or they are inspiring it for connection. And when we are in a place of feeling like we have to protect ourselves, we only worry about our own individuality. We are more defensive. Our conversations are depreciative. They're critical of other people. They can be destructive. But when we have conversations and the language actually encourages a sense of safety and openness, we have the potential to access empathy, creativity, higher order thinking, critical thinking. We think more in terms of we instead of me. And every single word that we utter is moving us in one direction or another. So how we ask a question isn't just a nice thing to do, it's critical if we want the full potential of people to be able to show up.
Uh, Deep thoughts. What led to the creation of collaborative by design? So again, you were doing other work before in the world. A lot of this know was headed in this direction, but I'm kind of curious, like, what was the genesis of saying, well, I need to start this company called Collaborative by Design?
Collaborative by Design was founded because I actually social constructionism kind of underpins everything that I do.
Mhm.
And that means you don't do anything by yourself. We are socially constructing the world around us. And so the title Collaborative by Design had multiple levels to it. One of which was I collaborate with other consultants, both in my field as well as outside of my field, to provide services to organizations. But it was also that piece of recognizing with experiential education, as you know, all of those activities, they're designed to, quote, teach leadership and teamwork. And at
Yes.
some point I had this activity isn't teaching teamwork and leadership. That's inherent in every one of us. It's the design of the activity. And so if we can design the structure of our organizations for collaboration and collective action, then it's going to bring out that natural inherent tendency in us to cooperate, collaborate, work together on things. And so it shifted my whole focus to how do organizations shift the way they design, shift their structures. And gradually over time, that has led to the framework of organizations as really not being entities, but rather hubs of conversation, hubs of people in conversation and collective action that are organizing for a shared outcome. So they're really a living system, and it shifts everything when you shift that perspective.
Now, right, if you kept track for me pre-pandemic that I've been running team building, this is my 28th year, Cheri. This is so weird because I think Cheri knew me when I started, right? Like in the very, very early days.
Yeah, early
Uh,
on.
Shout out to our good friend Dr. Simon Priest out there. I know he's listening
Hey,
somewhere.
Simon.
And that, so one of my insights in doing the geocaching-based team building known as geoteaming is that I've always set up the design to be competitive, collaborative, right? Teams are set up to compete against each other. And the real goal is that there's a reward for all the teams to collaborate together. And my own insight, at least pre-pandemic, right? Because I haven't run as many in-person team building events since then. But even for the few that I have run since then, it is at least given me the insight that corporations and organizations are actually getting worse at cross-team collaboration and not better. Do
Oh,
you have the
interesting.
same insight or do you have a different insight? I would love to know.
Um, I I have a different insight, and it's probably the nature of my work,
Sure.
and that people that seek out shifting their culture to one that's more collaborative are probably geared more in that perspective. And I think also organizations that recognize conversation is integral to their success have to recognize the kind of interactive nature of engagement of people working together towards a common outcome. I like to think that the world is changing towards the more collaborative. um, Fear drives the opposite. Fear drives the competitive.
Well, I'd love to hear then too. What are some of the results, maybe of either some of the people you've been working with or something that you've seen? So here, now I can do the bowling story, right, Sherry? So,
Yes.
in appreciative inquiry, what Sherry introduced me to, we got a chance to hang out with Cooper Ryder, one of the founders of it, and they gave this great uh, story that shows why appreciative inquiry and the social constructionism is a positive way for that. And so, two teams of kids are bowling, all right, and they take video of all of them. And in one team, they show them everything that they did wrong and then tell them how to do it right. And that sounds like an approach some of us would take, and they improve. They improve like 10%. But in the other group, they edited all the video and only show what the students did right, like whenever they hit a strike or completed a spare. And even if it was one frame, that's all they showed them. And this group improved too, but like by 100 points. So that this team that was started out with an average of 100 now had an average of 200. So I'm
Yep.
curious now, Sherry, in your experience, what are some of the, what's the best story or result that you might be able to talk about for a
Oh,
company or organization that shifted their culture?
oh, boy. Um,
I gave you all the easy questions. This is a setup, right?
yeah, this is set up for a much harder question. Um, I have a lot more examples of like individual scenarios within an organization that switches the
Okay.
way they're engaging. Um,
Yeah, you
or
can share that if that works. Up to you.
Okay, or even, individuals using the two practices of asking generative questions and using a positive frame, with families and relationships. Um, the, an example within an organization that I worked with recently, they shifted the way they started doing their performance appraisals. And so instead of, people coming in and they review what went well, but then they spend most of the time on how they need to improve and what they can do to improve. Um, and then they shifted that to using actually uh, they used SOAR, which is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results,
Mhm.
to guide them in asking generative questions that help deepen the awareness of employees' strengths and when they're at their best and really helping them clarify, when I'm at my best, this is what's happening, and how can I bring that forward to be at my best for other activities, maybe ones where I need to improve. Um, but then by asking generative questions, allowing the employee to lead the review, and to lead with, where do I feel like I have opportunities for improvement that could then be supported by the manager. Anyway, what they said afterwards was that focusing on growth and learning and desired outcomes completely shifted the energy of the interaction. There was a more honesty, trust was built, employees were excited to go out and make changes. And they said that the typical employee came in even talking about things they needed to improve that the manager hadn't even been aware of. So um, yeah, it shifted. And then let me give you a quick example of um, family scenario with in our trainings these days, we have a number of concepts that we use uh, that are sticky, so that organizations and teams, just with one word, uh, bring themselves back into a place of connection. Um, and one of those is being below the line. And if you're below the line, you're being defensive and protective and probably feeling attacked or criticized. And the other one is something we call a do-over. That is, when you get into that conversation you don't want to be in, how could you do that one over in a way that resulted in what you wanted to? And my favorite story about these two things was one of our trainers actually had a 6 and a 9-year old, and he's of course taught all this stuff to his family.
Mhm.
And he was in his office working, and he started to hear the two kids, the 6 and the 9-year old, arguing. And the more they argued, the louder they got. And he started thinking, I'm going to have to go in there and look them up. And he said, I was just about to get up from my seat, and suddenly there was silence. And the 6-year-old said, wait a minute, I'm below the line. I need a do-over. And he said, he got up and he just went to listen to what happened. But he said, here's this 6-year-old and 9-year-old totally changed their conversation as soon as they became aware. Oh, anyway, that's one of my favorites.
Oh, it is a great one. Well, that's a proud parenting moment where
Yes.
now you didn't have to intervene. Uh,
Exactly.
which is Cheri. I don't know if you've been watching my social media, but my oldest son now and his wife are expecting, and that would make me a grandfather.
Congratulations. When do they do?
May 15th, and we just went to the baby shower, and she's doing fantastic. And this is going to be one lucky baby. The theme of the theme of the baby shower was books.
Oh, what a great theme.
And so all these people brought great childhood books, and luckily I know a couple authors. So we actually got three, I think from Seattle. Oh, no, one from Arkansas. Our friend Nicole Smith has a book called Blue, and then Star Hug by Cindy Lee Wong, and then a third one, Ivy Kwong here created one. Kind of a little bit on her own self journey. She was a lawyer who now is a therapist.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
And
And so now,
what was the name of that book?
oh, now I have to look. I don't know if I have the name right off the top of my head. It'll take me half a second to get it. Ivy Kwong. But what was so great too is that a lot of times Asian Pacific Islanders would say, "I wish there were more children's books." That were featuring Asian Pacific Islanders. This one is called The
Yes.
Little Girl, the Ocean, and the Moon. Right here, actually, and I'm gonna put this here on screen. Let's see if I can get this right. Ta-da! There we go. The Little Girl, the Ocean, and the
Oh,
Moon.
wonderful.
And she just read it live recently at a conference, and it was really great. It just talked about she had a dream to go to the ocean, and a bunch of people shut this dream down, including one of her boyfriends. And we're all yelling at the book or telling you, leave that guy. And so finally, of course, she books her ticket on her own and gets to the ocean. And so there's a
Oh,
great piece around that. So yeah, it was fantastic though that books is the theme. I also recently just did a middle school program. I'd love to hear if you're doing any work with kids or children, young adults. In a middle school program, the three teachers that work this middle school were all adamant about reducing screen time. Like they're making suggestions about putting phones in lockers at night while they charge, and some of the parents were limiting data. That as soon as the data is up for a kid, that they got to give back the phone because they can't do anything with it.
that's
So
great.
yeah, I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
any other research like that.
I have read I've read a number of articles that are recommending reduced screen time. Um, yeah, it's that need to get out and have kids be able to connect with each other, engage, person to person. Yeah, yes,
Have you seen the moving Helping Hands?
I have not.
Oh, you got to put that on your list. It's about um, a black gentleman when he grew up, right? Grew up poor, but the mom, there's a piece of mental health in there. She was having trouble when her husband left her. Finally got help, and when she finally got help, she came in there and did things. She was working for a gentleman, helping to clean his house, and it turned out he helped her how to learn how to read because he had this massive library.
Oh,
So as soon as that
wow.
happened, she came into the house and she says, "You get two shows a week on television, right?" Television was the early version of the iPhone, right, or the
Right.
cell phone. Is that you get two shows a week and that's it. Otherwise, right, you gotta spend the rest of your time. You gotta read 2 books a week and give me a report, like a short summary of the book.
Huh?
And this gentleman went on to become one of the top pediatric brain doctors, who was the first to separate two Siamese twins that were connected at the
Oh, I
head.
remember. Yes. I didn't know his story, but the early story, but I knew of him.
Yeah, you got to watch the movie,
Oh,
right, to see some of the behind the scenes story. What was great about it too, Sherry, right? Talk about teamwork. I know you and I are super passionate around teamwork. My most astounding point was it took him months to like imagine in his head. And he was actually accused when he was younger in grade school that he had no imagination,
oh no.
right? And so eventually he had to develop and figure out what was imagination to him. And so he was able to envision this surgery, even though it had never been done before. It
Wow.
required 50 people in the operating room,
Oh my Lord.
2 separate teams, 25 dedicated to one kid, 25 dedicated to the other kid. And once they were able to
Oh,
separate, right, then they were all able. But there was like dual anesthesiologist, dual, right, cardiac, dual, like
wow.
everything that you needed inside of there.
That sounds
And,
amazing.
and then after that, he was able to complete 5 more. He's the only person I think that has ever done 6 of these type of
Jeez.
surgeries.
So that the idea might be to circle back to the technology is you have to read at least 2 books a week to get your phone back.
Yeah,
And a
parents,
book
listen up.
report on each. Yeah.
You earn 10 minutes back on your phone. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
So Sherry, catch me up during the pandemic. What happened with you during said pandemic?
oh.
I'd love to hear like even that day, March of 2020, right? Mine is I had 15 canceled programs because I was still doing face-to-face team building. I'd love to hear, what did you do over your Corona vacation?
Yeah, yeah. It actually felt like we didn't skip a beat. We were in our last in-person training when everything started to shut down. We had 3 people from Duke Energy in the training, and we had 2 people from FEMA. And at like
Oh,
1:30 on the second day, their phones went off almost at the same time. And they were like, we have to leave within an hour. And everything shut down. And at first we were like, what in the world are we going to do? And the first thing we did was we went online with all of our um, trainers that had been trained already, and we did an appreciative inquiry summit, strategic planning summit with everybody.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then we started offering free courses. We did with one of our trainers, we offered a free boot camp for teachers
Mm.
to support them in having conversations worth having with kids and parents in this transition to be online. We started Monday Kickstarters, which is a free
Mm.
30-minute practice of coming in, and it's practicing how do I take this issue or this problem or this negative conversation and flip it so I can have a conversation worth having. And then we transitioned and put our boot camps online, and we were like our courses were full to capacity. I think probably because people didn't have much else to do right away.
Right.
And but also that notion that there was I think a beginning growing awareness that conversation really makes a difference in our lives about what we can do, how we feel, etc. And so the boot camps went online, our certification went online. I feel like I was working more during the pandemic than I was before the pandemic. It transformed everything, and just kind of catapulted us into an easy, affordable way to bring the practices to more people.
And it was always there, Cheri, right? You know,
It
me and
was.
Simon, we were both gigantic advocates for
Yep.
more than 20 years, telling people we could do this. But like, everyone told us, well, here's a bunch of money. You got to fly. You got to fly to Orlando.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, I think they're because it was a less, people were far less comfortable with the environment. And it was
Yeah.
like, oh, but we need the touchy feely. And you can create that, as you well know, because you're a master at it. You can create all those connections in an online fashion, I think.
You know,
It's still person to person is still, there's a place for it as well.
absolutely. You'll have to take a look. There's recent research from Carmen Simon, who talks about they ran the same sales presentation, virtual, hybrid, on a phone, and in person.
Huh?
And they actually said for that sales presentation that the virtual was the most effective. You know, in conversations here too, I think you got to focus more on the conversation here on virtual because the auditory is like so much more an important factor because you don't have the three dimensionality and all the other
Yeah.
stuff of the in person. So I think there's some advantage to it. Although there's some other research we're about to share, Cheri. So keep tuned in when we're going to run like 3 or 4 programs this year. We have somebody who has information that also says though, in building relationships is still like in person is still one of the tops, but in delivering education, we're gonna about to share which of the three is the best venue for sharing education. So keep an ear out for that.
I will do so.
Speak,
I'll be interested.
Speaking of keeping an ear out, so what were some of the top practices that you use to keep your virtual audiences engaged? I'm just curious, like, what did you either see or what did you actually do to keep your virtual audiences engaged in your program?
I think a virtual environment, especially in the beginning, I'm just thinking of this right now.
It's okay.
That because everybody was new to trying to transfer everything onto Zoom, or Google or something like that. There was it opened the door for people to not be hyper vigilant about being perfect at everything. So there was room to make a mistake and have people say, I didn't know that either. Or
Mm,
so I think it really drove, for me, I think it drove greater transparency and comfort with being really genuine and authentic. It made it easier to get over myself. Um,
mm,
and I think that the result was perhaps even greater connection with people,
hmm.
because that sense of authenticity and the sense of really listening to somebody and responding. And of course, you still see people's facial expressions. You just don't see the whole body language always, but anyway, I think it drove a deeper sense of connection with people, and for participants, with people that were on the call together. And we did a lot of, putting people in breakout rooms and
It's
engaging
conversation. Yeah, you
activities.
could.
Yeah, I mean, of course. And lots of practical applications. So there was the kind of that seamless, just like breaking into small groups and coming back in a whole system. I think, and this is true for me, if I come to a program in a virtual setting, and I think it's true for the people that we worked with, that making it highly relevant to them and their lives, and that it speaks to their purpose, their passions, what their need to know something. Because otherwise it's too easy in a virtual space to start answering your emails and then you're not really present. Again, for me, the highly relevant experiential activities, I can't tell you the number of times I would get onto a virtual program because I wanted the information, But as soon as they put me in a breakout room just to chat with people with no relevant purpose for me, I typically signed out. But when it was, I'm working with a group of people and we're all working on the same thing that's really relevant to all of us and are trying to move that forward, I was in there in a heartbeat. And so for us, that was also making those breakout sessions highly relevant for people. Yeah, and I think just having speakers that are, relational, passionate, humble, just they're regular people. I don't see myself as anything other than that with people. And there are often people on the call that are far more knowledgeable about many things than I am. So, bringing out their knowledge, having them add to things, just the same way I would if I was in person. I think sometimes forgetting that you're in a virtual setting, instead of saying, oh, I'm in a virtual setting, I'm not going to be able to. It's like, no, we're together, let's do the same thing.
That's
So,
what one of my friends said. Look, we're face to face. This is my face. This is
yeah,
your face. We're
exactly.
actually face to face now, so let's get over it. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you keep it goes back to the appreciative inquiry part. When you highlight all the things that you can't able to do, then you're actually telling your audience all the things you wanted to do but can't do now, as opposed to what's the inverse, right? The
right,
fact that we can have breakouts and you have a conversation with somebody halfway across the planet and
exactly.
really gain a perspective that you don't talk to. I think that's really key. I really love your point though in the hyper vigilant to not be perfect. I got a chance to hear Amy Herman, who's the art specialist. She's an art specialist who helps teach people about perspective now for corporate
Yeah.
America, and she gave, I thought, one of the most unique descriptions of coronavirus for people. So there was an art piece where they took a shed and they put this shed in an idyllic meadow and they filled it full of explosives, Cheri, and then they blew it up.
Oh,
Then her team meticulously went out and retrieved all the items from the blown up shed, cataloged them her in her studio, and then recreated them into a three-dimensional model.
wow.
Right? And which is basically like there's a bunch of holes and gaps in between all the burnt up, charred items. And then she goes, this is basically, you after coronavirus, is that everyone had their world blown up.
Yep. Yes.
And now everyone's spending time putting them back together. And she just gave the challenge saying, you could do this consciously, or you
Mhm.
can just put it back unconsciously. But now you have this opportunity to
Yeah.
do this. And so it's a beautiful, striking image if you can find it on the internet. I want to give a shout out to my good friend Tony Taylor, who's saying he's loving this conversation. By the way, one of my good speaker friends here in Washington State.
Thank you. Hi, Tony. I've got a question about that art
Ooh,
piece.
go.
Where did they work to put it back into exactly the same little structure it was before?
So the way the image is, and I don't have a copy yet of the image yet.
I'll
I'm
go
looking
find
to
it.
see if I can get one. But they basically had like vertical spikes or spires, right, in different places. And so they put all the items where they were like in three-dimensional space. But you could see all the holes through it, right? Yeah, as opposed to like, this idyllic shed that was like in the middle of a field, right? There's all these disparate parts kind of floating in three-dimensional space.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, really, really powerful image. Okay, speaking of powerful image, so what does Cheri Torres see in the future, especially for virtual and hybrid? Now that the world is starting to come back, I'm kind of curious. Are you on team? I'm back in person. Are you a mix? Are you still staying virtual? And what most importantly, what does Cheri see like, or have a wish or desire for that you could do in the future?
Okay, so we're doing a mix now. Um, for some people, their teams are scattered across the world, and so virtual works so well for them.
Yep.
Um, uh, for other people, they want their training in person because they're trying to reunite after COVID.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and I love both of those for different reasons. I don't think virtual is going away. I think it's only going to be enhanced by AI, the other AI. Um, and I am looking forward to what is it going to be like when we have VR and three-dimensional meetings virtually? You know,
Right.
what is that going to be like? How's that going to influence the sensory piece of how we engage? Um, the other thing I would absolutely love to see, I would like to see virtual platforms like this one do simultaneous translation into any language real time. So
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's out there already, but as I'm talking and not just closed captioning, but actually as I talk, AI is translating it, with a fraction of a delay.
Oh,
And
into the audio.
yes, and as you speak in a different language, it translates it to me in my language in real time so that everybody can be speaking their own language, but we're hearing what they're saying in our own language so that we can engage in a way that feels like we speak each other's languages.
So I've seen some parts of this, Sherry,
Oh, good.
where we use live interpreters, but Zoom
Yes.
has the ability to hold over 13 different interpreters simultaneously. So we ran a meeting in 8 languages. So things like Vietnamese, Chinese, Spanish, Somali, Amharic. And what's great about it is what happens is somebody logs in virtually and they're listening to me speak. So then now they're interpreting too, which is different than translating, by the way. It's real time. And what the person who's listening, let's pretend like they're listening to Chinese, they will hear my voice until the interpreter starts. Then it'll drop my voice to like 30%. So you can still hear some of my intonations and other things in the background, but now
Right.
you can hear, right, the Chinese interpreter speaking over that during that part. And so I have shown other people how to do it. So one of the great ones is my good friends at Living Waters for the World. They help create clean water around the world. And so
Mhm.
they actually had to have like French Creole to Spanish interpreters.
Wow.
And they got it, and she was able to set it up herself and like make everybody was on the channels, and they were really blown away. It really starts to feel like the UN. Like we used to see those scenes at the UN where
Yes.
50 countries are represented, someone speaking, and everyone's getting something in their ear with
Yes.
the right interpretation. You can do that today, but now you need humans, right? The AI part isn't quite there. The AI part is for the captions. You can get captions now in 30 or more different languages in Zoom. But to get the verbal part right now, you still got to use humans until that part comes around. It's probably not far away though. I would
Yeah.
probably say.
Yeah. I would think when our book's been translated into Spanish, and we've got now 3 people in the Mexico and Latin America who are really wanting to grow that. So,
Yes.
um, but when I've dropped things into Chat GPT and said, can you translate? It's almost perfect. So
Yeah.
it is not very far away.
So have you seen the other one too? Have you seen PowerPoint? Interpretation or translation?
No, I haven't.
Oh wait, here, let's do this demo here. Hold on a second. Let's see.
That's cool. I didn't even know that was possible. Never even occurred to me to ask that question.
Okay, always use subtitles. Give me any subtitle language. I'll tell you if it's available.
Spanish,
Spanish. Okay, so
easy
hopefully you know a
one.
little Spanish, right?
I do.
Spanish. Okay, great. So now I'm going to put this above the slide. There we go. Okay, great. So now I should be able to do this. Okay, so watch this. Hello, Cheri. This is John Chen, and I want to tell you how great it's been having you on my show. You know, you're an amazing, beautiful soul making change in the world.
Oh, what? PowerPoint is doing that?
Yes, PowerPoint has had this feature so that you can interpret or translate into one of 40 different languages, including Arabic, Italian, right,
Wow.
Japanese.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
That's
so here, watch. I'll show you where the setting is. Let's see if I can actually do this correctly. Watch. Are you ready?
that
Okay,
is amazing.
so up here, I know it's a little small, but right up here, you first click slideshow,
Yep.
way up here, okay? And then you click always use subtitles. And now let's take one that's a little more difficult. Let's take Arabic, okay? Okay, so now I'm going to do Arabic. And now I go back in, and now I'm going to start presenting. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back to this screen. And now, Cheri, I'm going to show you how amazing it is for me to talk in Arabic. One
Wow.
of my communities is Arabic when I'm teaching them team building, and they were watching these captions, and they later on told me they're about 90 to 95% correct.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh, thank you.
You
I'm
can
so
do this in
excited. I
person.
can do
Yeah,
it right now.
you can do this in your in-person programs because it's listening to the mic on your laptop. So
Oh,
while you're presenting live, or if you wear a remote mic, if you like to walk around a lot, you could be running these captions the entire time in your program.
oh, how awesome is that? Thank you, John. Huh.
So, well, now you see what I've done with my vacation, Cheri, is that I've learned a lot of technical tricks, right? So I think, Cheri, have you seen that this is like my studio that I'm running on to
Oh, wow. You have just become a master of online virtual engagement.
Oh, and so I have one other piece of good news, right? So I finally really deepened my relationship with the National Speakers Association, and 2 weeks ago I earned my certified speaking professional.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
So let's see. Wait here. Watch this. Let's see. I can. This was right. One more. There you go. There. So this is that coming out. I'll be walking across the stage in Denver, Colorado, and you receive a big old medal that says certified speaking professional. Only 17% of the members have earned this. So
Yes, that's wonderful. Congratulations.
thank you so much, Cheri. All right. So
Well
Cheri,
deserved.
to close today, what's your wish? Do you have a wish for 2024?
Oh, boy, my wish. My
So
wish would
many.
be
Yeah.
for our country to reunite itself into compassionate, loving human beings that have everyone's best interests at heart and are not polarizing one another so much. I don't think we are that way when we're one-on-one. I'd like to see more of it.
I think you'll love the book too, right? If you have not read a book called, it's from Lonnie. Geez, I got to get his last name correct. I'll have to take a look for it. But basically, it was a book where he wrote the story of 10 people who used to be members of hate groups, and they
Mm.
all rescinded their hate group. And Lonnie's key part, he's a diversity trainer here in Seattle. Uh, his key part, he said, was that all 10 of them had made a friend in the group they used to hate.
Wow. Yep.
It's almost impossible for you to have a friend in a hate group and still have you hate the entire group.
What is his last name?
I know. Now I gotta find it. Hold on. Let me see if I can
I'm
find it.
sorry. I love all your references. Do you
Lonnie.
have a wish while you're looking? Do you have a wish for 2024?
Do I have a wish for 2024? Uh, oh, good. I did get it right. Lonnie Lusardo, the anatomy of organized hate. The anatomy of organized hate. What's my wish for this year? What is my wish for this year? I think it's the same one that I'm really passionate around too, Cheri. I really started this virtual piece too. When people ask me, when it gets down to it, it's to reduce suffering.
Uh,
right?
Wow.
People were suffering in virtual and hybrid meetings, and they
Yeah.
still are. I still get weekly reports of like, oh my gosh, this virtual conference was so bad. And
I could give you several of those references.
oh, good. Well, that might be my call to action for you, Cheri. Is like share me the name of the organizer. Let me, see if I can do something for these people because a lot of times they are still well-meaning, beautiful
Oh,
causes. Like the
absolutely.
work is right, but if it's not delivered in the right way, then you're not making the change that you could be, that you
Yes.
could be.
And then you don't have the effect and the positive outcomes you're looking for.
Exactly. All right,
Yeah.
Cheri, last question. If you could get people to remember one thing from this interview, what would be that one thing you want them to remember?
Um, Pause, breathe, and get curious before you open your mouth.
Mm. Our good
Make
friend,
make
our
your
good friend
comment.
Dr. Mel has a system called SQUID that the first step, the S in SQUID stands for stop. And I do think that's true, Cheri. I think that everyone else, when you think you get triggered or whatever it is you call it, that stopping is 99.9% the best answer than reacting with your default.
Yeah. And when you breathe, it shifts to triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's going to shift you. So be intentional with your conversations.
Outstanding. Well, take one deep breath with me, Cheri. Ready? Inhale. Well, we hope that you have a wonderful day. Thanks for spending a little time with us here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast.
Thank you so much, John.
Outstanding. That's Cheri Torres, who is joining us here, right here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. We hope that you took time to take a breath, that you enjoyed the conversation. She said that conversation so integral to all the change. And so now we're just going to share too with our good friends in Arabic why conversation is so important and how you can use technology in all these different ways to communicate, but most importantly, to use these conversations to create a world that is better. Hey, if you're watching here, again, subscribe, share, or like, or comment on side of here. You can subscribe to any of the places here. I got to get shorter to the engagingvirtualmeetings.online. That is one of 13 places for the podcast. In addition to that, make sure, and you can register for a free ticket here too. And you can also get the VIP tickets, or for the first time ever, in person, where Cheri shared with us that sometimes being in person can be more valuable, especially for establishing relationships. And the last one here is this. If you want to be like Cheri, then you too could be our next guest. Go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, select interview, and you could be the next guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Thank you so much, and make your world better today. We'll see you next time.
Drawing star people and keep